there is nothing else which hurts a physician more than the malpractice premiums, which are going sky high.
I truly believe that women's health care is seriously at risk here with this crisis.
I think the doctor-patient relationship is in jeopardy.
The frustration level of physicians is really quite high.
Tort reform alone has not brought about dramatic reductions in either rates or the rate at which malpractice rates are increasing.
Hello, I'm Mike Scanlon, and this is Front Page, your resource for up-to-date information and frank discussion about the healthcare crisis facing physicians and patients across Ohio. Here are the latest developments. PAG representatives met with State Senator Kirk Schuring regarding malpractice insurance. The senator has formally requested that the President of the Ohio State Senate and Speaker of the Ohio House call for public hearings. He also asked that these hearings have subpoena power by the Judiciary Committees on Civil Justice in both houses. The purpose of these hearings is to investigate why, after tort reform, insurance companies are continuing to increase premiums by 100%, 200% or more, even for physicians who have no claims history. Senator Schuring also introduced Senate Bill 204 on March 4th, calling for a moratorium for 1 year on increases in medical malpractice insurance premiums. PAG spearheaded a major letter-writing campaign to support these hearings, and it also supports Senate Bill 204, the freeze on premiums. As part of PAG's ongoing efforts to fight for doctors, PAG is organizing a physician March on Columbus to the Governor's Office and to the State House on Wednesday, April 21st, to make the following demands of the Governor and the Legislature. Your involvement is urgently needed. You and your colleagues on the hospital medical staff can have an impact on the proposed legislation to freeze malpractice premiums. For information on how you can join PAG in the March to Columbus on April 21st, visit the PAG website at www.pagohio.com. Some people feel that these problems are only indicative of Northeast Ohio and not relevant to other parts of the state. Recently, we spoke with Dr. Evangeline Andarcio, an OBGYN in Dayton.
All of us began to feel the pinch in OBGYN, particularly in the Dayton area. And we came together and formed a grassroots organization to try to become politically active so we could try to resolve the crisis. I've worked very hard with the hospital and the physicians on lowering the limits of liability. The first step that I took was I met with the medical executive board of the hospital, which consists of all the department heads of the different medical staff, OBGYN, surgery, etc. And I presented the idea to them. The hospital was very resistant because they have requirements too in dealing with insurance. But I asked the physicians point blank in front of the CEO of the hospital, I said, we as physicians must begin to speak out and say what our needs are, because no one is going to speak for us. So we need to say, this is what we need to continue to stay in practice. And so at that point, all the physicians unanimously voted to proceed with asking the hospital to lower the limits. Well, then the hospital had to go back to their board of trustees to ask for this, and the Board of Trustees met, and they did lower the limits.
This is one example of how physicians can have a voice in this critical matter. In fact, one of the driving forces behind the PAG effort is getting physicians to engage themselves and their patients in taking a stance on frivolous lawsuits, exorbitant premiums, and abusive trial lawyers. Dr. Dan McLaughlin, one of the earliest outspoken supporters of PAG, had these comments on the role of physicians and administrators.
I think people will certainly say organized medicine has failed on bigger issues in the past, and many doctors are afraid to re-engage. All of that being said, organized medicine is mandatory. I strongly advocate our involvement with organized medicine because we need to deal with these issues on a large perspective. But I will equally say that my opinion is for effective, quicker resolution of at least some of these problems and certainly engagement of the physician population, we need a grassroots effort that is close, that is led by a lot of local people who are involved in the game and who are willing to fight despite the huge risks that we're taking in doing so. PAG has developed as one of those grassroots organizations that is willing to take this back to the streets, out of the lounge, and for what it's worth, maybe in the face or in your face, if you will, kind of phrase, against those who are threatening not only the practice of medicine, but quite honestly, this whole problem is really threatening patients' access to care and access to good quality care.
A short time ago, I sat down with the founder of PAG, Dr. James Tassi, and here are some excerpts of that conversation.
We can all enunciate what our problems are. We can talk about how they developed, but we never get to the next step. And when I talk about taking it out of the doctor's lounge, what I mean is that somebody has got to implement an action plan that is tough. There has to be a bulldog approach to this, because who is it that's out there actually screaming out on behalf of physicians as to what their plight is? There is not an awareness on behalf of the public as to how bad medical practice is crumbling. And there's not even a shared awareness amongst physicians as to how we feel as a group about how we should fight back. And it seemed to me that somebody needed to pick up the ball and take that next step.
The present system is geared for the sole purpose of propagating the wealth of attorneys. It's not about justice or good medical practice.
The hospital is unlikely to come to our defense when we as individuals are going to be sitting at the end of a lawsuit.
Politics, like it or not, is a part of the equation.
What are you doing to uncap the fees that we get paid so that we can pay these premiums so that we can stay in business?
We are regulators. We do what the law mandates we do. If you need to have the law changed, you have to go to the legislature.
There is no need for a fundamental change in the medical malpractice civil justice system because while the physicians, while they're caring for their patients, are advocates, once a real event of malpractice occurs, the patient needs an advocate to obtain justice and compensation for a real event of malpractice.
One of the things that PAG sees is a lot of double talk out there. There are messages that have floated around for some period of time that need to be corrected. When a trial attorney, for example, says, "We are the patient advocates," meaning the trial attorneys, the doctors are the patient advocates, not the trial attorneys. I think that every physician should jump on the bandwagon and become outspoken and speak to their patients and even publicly about how this crisis is affecting their daily lives, and then band together in the same way that the plaintiff attorneys know how to band together. The plaintiff bar certainly knows how to get it done. Why don't physicians know how to get it done? PAG wants to be task-oriented. It wants to focus on specific steps, and it wants to succeed in every step that it takes. If it means getting the patients involved through a PAG pamphlet campaign, then that's the next task. But one of the biggest underlying tasks is to have all physicians get involved. And if you're not involved from a medical malpractice insurance point of view right now, because perhaps you're in a part of the state where you're not having to pay $150,000, still you should come forward and let PAG talk to you about all these influences that are affecting your well-being.
We'll have more of Dr. Tassi's comments in future editions of Front Page. Now let's hear from a couple of local physicians who share the plight of practitioners across the state of Ohio and realize that patient education is vital to combating society's attitude and misperceptions about medicine and those who practice it.
My plumber was joking with me one time, and he said, you know, he handed me the bill for what he did, and I said, wow, I don't even charge this much. And he said, well, that's right, and I used to be a physician too. And this was a joke, but at the same time, It's not a joke. As physicians, you can't pass those costs on to somebody. So we have to somehow still pay our employees, pay our electric bills, you know, et cetera, the expenses of running a practice on the same dollars that are being chiseled away and chiseled away. And I don't think patients understand that. That's one of the things that you know, you kind of hesitate how to talk to patients about it, because of course they all think that, well, physicians are loaded and money just flows out of the sky to them or something. But that's not true. I don't know how else to say that. It's just not true.
I would be very willing to do anything which would make an impact on the public generally, to make them aware of how physicians across the board feel that this malpractice crisis is playing on their profession. Not that the physicians are doing any less as far as their medical practice is concerned. We continue doing the same thing even under duress. And this is certainly a very big issue for us right now. And I think it'll have to give one of these days. There'll have to be some solution found. Otherwise, there's no way that physicians can continue.
What has to happen? Small things have to happen and big things have to happen. With the upcoming elections, if the Supreme Court in Ohio can stay balanced in a direction that would be supportive of efforts toward tort reform and supportive toward the current laws which are on the books, which, while not perfect, at least begin working in the right direction, that will certainly be an aid. It'll show that this type of legislation can occur, and that it will hold up, and that we can continue on from there.
We are coming to the close of this edition of Front Page. We have only heard a handful of stories from literally thousands of doctors fighting for survival. As part of this program, we will continue to give you updates on important issues and developments in this PAG Fight Back effort. Before we wrap up today's edition, let's recap the basics of the current crisis and hear a final word from Dr. Tassi. Ohio is one of 19 states identified by the American Medical Association experiencing a severe medical liability crisis. Cuyahoga County ranks third among all counties in the United States in terms of medical liability risk. Physicians in Northeast Ohio have faced a 100 to 300% increase in premiums. Physician reimbursement fees are drastically limited by Medicare and managed care. Contracts with Medicare and managed care forbid physicians from passing on the cost of skyrocketing premiums to the consumer. Some Ohio physicians have elected to retire early. Others have limited the scope of their practice, avoided high-risk procedures, and some are even leaving the state to practice elsewhere.
Think about the association as a starting point. The only way that we're going to accomplish reform measures is by having a statewide unity. And to get that statewide unity, what PAG wants to do is to get an opportunity to speak to every physician group throughout the state. Maybe contribute money, maybe not, but definitely to hear the plan and attempt to get doctors together.
That's all for this edition of Front Page. If you're interested in learning more about how you can get PAG pamphlets, information, or how to arrange for a PAG speaker to come to your hospital or place of practice, please visit us at www.pagohio.com. United, we can make a difference for you and your patients.